What's up, everybody? It's Ryan with On This Day in MMA, and today is November the 4th, 2023, Saturday. And on this day in MMA history, November the 4th, 2017, we had UFC 217, Madison Square Garden. The headliner of the card was a middleweight championship fight between Michael Bisping and George St. Pierre. This was Bisping's second title defense after he had won the middleweight championship against Luke Rockhold at UFC 199 in June of 2016. George St. Pierre was trying to come back after a 4-year layoff and he was trying to win the middleweight title because he was the champion at welterweight for years and years. I'm sure everybody knows about his reign at the welterweight in the welterweight ranks. Probably the best welterweight champion of all time, considered by some up there in the top 2 or 3 best MMA fighters of all time. That's where St. Pierre ranks overall. The way it stands right now, at least in my opinion too. I would say he's top 3 for sure, top 3 all time. Probably in there with Khabib and John Jones. I think you probably do, my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think you do Khabib, John, and GSP. Those are probably the top 3. So that was UFC 217. It was on this day in MMA, November the 4th, 2017. Couple other championship fights on that card as well. For the bantamweight title, they had Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw. And for the women's strawweight title, they had Rose versus Joanna. And all three, I didn't realize this until I started looking into this a little bit. That was the first event in history, and since then, where all 3 champions had lost the title on that night. So Bisping had the title, he lost it to GSP. Now, granted, GSP never fought again in the UFC after that fight. He only held the title for, I think, just thinking off of memory here, 60 days or 90 days, and I think they stripped him for the title. So he didn't have the title that long, never fought again in the UFC. He came in basically, I think he probably thought that was a pretty good matchup against Bisping, and Bisping was a little bit on the tailer end of his career at that point. I think Bisping only had about 2 other fights in the UFC before he had retired. Very good fight, very close fight. Bisping definitely had his moments in that fight for sure. In the 3rd round, I think it was, GSP just started. I think he caught him, and then they were down on the cage, and he got his back, and then he got the stoppage with the rear naked choke. And then the Cody Garbrandt TJ Dillashaw fight. TJ Dillashaw won that. I believe it was in the 2nd round by punches. Yeah, TJ Dillashaw won that fight. So Cody Garbrandt was the champion. TJ came in there on with the co-main event and won it in the 2nd round by TKO punches. And the other title fight, Rose versus Joanna, it was TKO punches in the 1st round. And look, I remember watching that fight. I don't think anybody had Rose winning that fight. I really don't. And they gave her an immediate rematch after that, too. Joanna, this was the time when she was just absolutely so dominant. She was probably on, from what I remember, the female pound-for-pound list. She was up there probably 1, 2, somewhere around there. Like, she was just, she seemed unbeatable at that time. She was just running through girls at that time, And then Rose got the rematch with her and beat her again. So it wasn't no fluke or anything. She caught her clean in that fight, the first fight in the 1st round, and stopped her. It was quick. I couldn't believe it. She caught her clean. Joanna dropped, went on top of her, started punching her. They stopped it. It was over in the 1st round. So that was a really great card. Also on that card was Stephen Thompson defeated George Masvidal by decision, unanimous decision, 30-26, 30-27, 30-27. And I did watch that fight as well. I don't know if it was, from what I remember, I don't think it was that big of a gap between that fight. I thought it was a little closer than that. But, yeah, Stephen Thompson in welterweight beat George Masvidal. And also at middleweight, Paulo Costa defeated Johnny Hendricks in the 2nd round by TKO punches. So that was another pretty good fight, too. That was when Paulo Costa was kind of just coming around. He was just getting ready to, I think that might have been his 1st or 2nd fight in the UFC. And he went against Johnny Hendricks, who who was very good in his time. He had some very close fights. Fought GSP. A lot of people thought he had won that fight against GSP. I remember watching that fight too, and I thought it was over. I thought Johnny won hands down for sure. But they gave the decision to GSP, and that's when he took his time off and was off for 4 years. That was the fight right before that. So he had been off for a while before he came in to UFC 217. He was out for like 4 years, I believe. And there was a record set there, like UFC 33, UFC 205, and UFC 214. This is what I was talking about before. The card featured 3 title fights. However, this was the first time in UFC history that all 3 champions lost their belts on the same card. Which is, I don't think anybody would have placed that bet, for all 3 of them to lose like that. That was a very, it's the first time it ever happened. I can't say it's ever happened since, to be honest with you. And it's rare that they put 3 title fights on one pay-per-view as well. That's rare. It's rare to have 2. Unless sometimes they might do like a female championship fight and then a male championship fight or something like that. But it's very rare to have 3 on the same card. And the fight of the night, there was none awarded for the fight of the night. The bonuses, performance of the night, $50,000 went to George St. Pierre, T.J. Dillashaw, and Rose Namajunas. Performance of the night, $25,000, was for Ovince St. Preux and Ricardo Ramos. And St. Preux, I believe, took that fight very short notice. He came out and had a very good fight, very entertaining fight, but he did take that on a little bit of short notice. From what I was reading on it a little while ago, and so that was probably the UFC's kind of like a little gesture. Hey man, appreciate you taking the fight. Here's a little bonus. So UFC 217, November the 4th, 2017, and today is November the 4th, 2023. So we were just going back a little bit in history on this day. UFC 217, Madison Square Garden, great card. Like we said before, all 3 of the champions lost their belts on that night. So, what else is going on here in the UFC, boxing, MMA, combat sports world? Well, I hadn't made a video in a few days because it just seems like, it's crazy, man, how much this Francis Ngannou, Tyson Fury thing is kind of like just taken over the wavelengths of like the MMA community, the boxing community, everything, man. It's just like every time you look up a video, it's like Francis and Fury. So, hey, they say, it doesn't, all press is good press. So they're constantly talking about it. If it would have ended like a lot of us thought it was going to, either by an early stoppage or Fury was just going to get him out of there, it would have been like, yeah, well, we kind of knew that was going to happen. It might have caught a little traction for a day or so, but that would have been it. But it has literally been an ongoing topic for like the last week, because I just think people are just still like so surprised that it even played out the way it did. A lot of people think Francis won. Again, the judging kind of came into a little bit of controversy. Like the one guy scored it, was it like 96-93 or 97-94 for Fury or something like that. So that was a little bit totally crazy. 1 point. He only lost by 1 point. That judge would have made that 1 point closer. It would have been, or it could have been a draw. That's what I think they probably should have scored it at. Just scored it as a draw. Not a lot of people would have probably said much about that. I don't know. I didn't rewatch it or anything like that. But, from what I remember of the fight, I did think Francis won it. He had the knockdown. I think he hurt him again in like the 6th or 7th round. So, it's opened up a big, huge window. It opened up a lot of questions about the heavyweight division in boxing. Like, is it legit? Like, it's definitely not what it used to be, that's for sure, but what is the level of that? Can you bring guys in and challenge for the belt and win them, with not a whole lot of experience and not a whole lot of that stuff, but, and what's Francis going to do next? Is it going to be Wilder? I think they, this is just me and this is just my opinion here. I see him doing the Wilder fight next. I'm just calling it right now. I do. I see him maybe doing the Wilder fight. Wilder's a free agent. He's looking for a payday. right? Francis probably wants to ride this wave and get back in there a little quicker. He didn't take a whole lot of damage. He's not hurt. He's still healthy. He probably wants to get back in there and capitalize a little bit on what the press that he has going on right now. So Wilder's a free agent. I could see him going in there and making something happen with Wilder in Saudi Arabia, just like they did this with Fury. And another thing too, I'm sure everybody saw as well, was the whole Ariel and Chael beef that they kind of had going back and forth. And look, man, I agree with what Chael was saying. The only thing that he was trying to say was they knew it was going to lose money before they even put the fight on. They knew it was going to lose money. Okay? So it's that oil money, that Saudi Arabia money. Like, they're not even that pressed about it. And he was making a good point. There wasn't a whole lot of, like, in the UFC, that's what makes them so great. And really, you know what, to be honest with you, this card just showed really how great the UFC is and how they do their productions and how they're set up and the whole 9 yards. Okay, we watch the UFC because we want to know, like, what's this guy going to do next? Who's he going to fight next? This one's fighting this one. That's what gets the whole thing going, and like afterwards, like who's he going to fight next? What's going to happen? This and that. You talk about the next thing. Yeah, it's about this fight, but it's still about what the guy does next. That's part of like the fun of watching it. In this thing, it was just a one-off. Like, it wasn't really like there wasn't nobody really had any anything vested into it or anything, So that was Chael's point. He knew it was going to lose money. And look, from what I'm seeing and reading, I think it only did 60 or 75,000 pay-per-view buys, and Chael made a good point too. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday or whatever it was, to do 75,000 pay-per-views, that's still pretty good. That's still pretty good. So, and he was also saying, like, who are we to say that it bombed or not? Because we're not the ones writing the check. So we don't know if it bombed or not. It's not up to us. It's up to the promotion, right? And if the promotion already knew it was going to lose money, it don't care. It don't matter to them. So it's no big deal. 75,000, hey, great. That's great. That's a win to them, I guess, because they knew it was going to lose money from the jump. So, and I think Chael also, when they started that video, I watched that, Ariel tried to blast him. Ariel tried to put him on Front Street a little bit in that video, and you could tell Chael didn't appreciate that at all. Ariel came at him with this clip and a couple other things and tried to put him on blast a little bit there, tried to make him eat a little crow, and it didn't work. It backfired. It backfired for sure. So, yeah, UFC 217, that was November the 4th, Madison Square Garden. Got a good card coming up, actually in Madison Square Garden, UFC 295, so that's coming up soon. That ought to be real interesting. Yuri Prohaska's coming back. I'm interested to see how he does when he comes back off of this injury. And of course, the Aspinall Pavlovich and Aspinall fight that's coming up. Is it for the interim? Is it for a number one contender? I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I see that a lot kind of in the media as well right now. Like, how do you make it an interim title if the champion is still going to hold on to the belt? And that, or I'm sorry, if they say that they're still going to do the Stipe and Jones fight, then that's really not for the interim. If they're still going to do the Jones-Stipe, then this is a number one contenders fight. They can say it's for the interim title, but it's really not. It's for the number one contender because they're not going to get Jones, whoever wins this. Now, that could change, but the way it sits right now, they're still saying they're going to do Jones versus Stipe when John's back from his injury, and everything, from his whatever he did. I think he tore his pec, so that's 8-9 months out. So if they still keep that fight in play, the Jones versus Stipe fight, and they don't get the winner of, and Jones doesn't fight the winner of Aspinall Pavlovich, then it really is just a number one contenders match then. So, but we'll see how all that plays out. Really interested in that fight. That ought to be a banger because both the guys haven't been out of the first round like their whole freaking career. Pavlovich has won like the last 7 fights in the first round. Aspinall, I think, has the least amount of fight time per fight out of all the UFC, the whole entire roster. I think he's number 1, ahead of Pavlovich, and he's number 2. So these guys get it done early and quick, and they're out of there. So this ought to be a really good card. we'll have some more videos before that one starts too. So we'll see you. Have a good one.